Welcome back. And now let's get into our big stories where we break down the most pressing events shaping Nigeria's political landscape. Today we're focusing on, obviously, the biggest story from the week, which is the major cabinet reshuffle announced by President Bola Tinubu. 5 ministers have been dismissed, 10 reassigned, and several new faces are now on the list of nominations, including Bianca Ojukwu for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And this restructuring, of course, which includes merging and dissolving key ministries, comes at a time when calls for government efficiency and a reduction in the cost of governance are at an all-time high.
And so to help us to analyze the potential impacts of this shift, we have 2 esteemed guests joining us. But first, we're going to start with our guest here in the studio until our second comment, and is the chairman of the African Democratic Congress in Lagos State, and that is Mr. George Ashiru. Well, thank you so much, sir, and thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you. My pleasure,
as
always.
For coming on. I mean, let's get started. I would like for you to have a feel of, when you heard the news and the reshuffle with, 5 ministers removed and 2 new appointees, 7 new appointees, and also the merging of these departments and ministries, and also adding new more. What's your perspective on this?
I have a double-edged sword in that regard. I would say the president also did well by at least doing something. The question is, was it enough? Was it timely? Was it based on the right motive? And will it solve the problem? So you first have to identify a problem and then have hypotheses around the problem. And I think the president possibly was focusing on responding to the cause of the people that things are wrong, and some people have to be held responsible. What I have an understanding of is, once your strategy, leadership and governance, is not consistent, then the people that you hire to help you implement it are not going to be able to deliver the results. Yeah. So naturally, in that regard, you have to keep headhunting. And I think that's what he has tried to do.
They said that this is about public perception. When you think about public perception, don't you think there should be more heads on the chopping block?
But what we were told is different. We were told that they had specific job objectives, and that there was a particular special advisor to the president that was doing performance management checks on all of them. And then a report came, and that some of them scored, in fact, the majority of them scored below 50, and some of them scored 0. And so presumptions that we have is that it's based on this, some kind of scientific methodology to find out if they're actually performing according to the original standards that were set for them, the metrics that were set for them. So if it was just public perception, then that's not leadership.
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about standards, I like, what you started with, talking about a government that doesn't necessarily have its own direction, doesn't necessarily have a clear cut direction, where it's going and what it's trying to achieve. It's going to be difficult to tell a minister that they failed when you haven't been able to create, achievable, pathway. So can you really blame these ministers? And I saw an interview with Senator Ainaya Baribe, where he argued that you can't blame a minister for failing if the little details that should be necessary for a country to function are not available. It's going to be difficult for any minister to do any work, that you can point to success. So can you blame them for failing?
It takes me back to when Margaret Thatcher lost her prime ministership. There were lots of issues, including Europe. And her own deputy prime minister said, when he was about to resign from government, which led to the cascaded to her being removed from office, he said, there's nothing worse than a leader who sends you to war with a gun and then takes out the bullets. He wants you to fail. So we are looking at it from citizenry point of view, from the electorate point of view, that all the people that you have gathered together to be in your cabinet, they were representatives of 36 states. They were not necessarily people that understood your vision, had the competency. And you see, leadership and the management, the corporate sector does not translate to public sector.
Right.
Absolutely not. The methodology and the corporate culture that exists in the private sector cannot work in government. This I got from direct experience of working as a state and in a federal situation as someone who was elected into office myself.
Yeah.
And what I've realized is that because the cultures are different, when a president comes in, sometimes he tries to impose a corporate culture on the private implementers of your policies, and the two are not necessarily going to mix. So what I think the president is missing is, first and foremost, like President Obasanjo said, did he really have a proper plan when he was coming into office? Because when you are headhunted, it's based on what you believe you're going to achieve. Before you get for your generals and your troops, you must know your objective at war. So if his objective was, is an economy, I want to grow the economy. That's what I want to do. I want to grow the economy. Then you're going to focus a lot on the finance. You're going to focus a lot on the everything to do with industry. And you will put heavy weights there. And then the others are not really your priority. So their performance is not going to be critical.
Right.
Then you will at least get the results. But if you are simply just playing the politics of appointment, oh, just give me somebody from your state. You know, there's somebody who has absolutely no experience as a youth corps.
Let's talk about...
I remember
That is a classic example. That was a representational appointment. So what do you expect from someone who does not have the background and you expect the person to deliver? Of course, public perception is going to be negative.
Let's talk about just one of the moves that we've seen was the dissolution of the Ministry of Niger Delta Development and also the Ministry of Sports Development. How do you see these decisions? Because, I mean, I have my personal views. You have your personal views as well. And when we also look at the reaction of critics, especially when it comes to the NDDC, it's been very, they're like, oh, go back to the drawing board. You cannot dissolve this, commission. It hasn't truly actualized what it's set out to do. But what's your take on it? Could this have been, is this structural change for good? Would it strengthen the national discourse and unity per se in terms of regional development? What's your take?
Okay, so having a national ministry for a region itself is an anomaly. Because then you have to think of the problem in the Northeast. You have to create a commission for them as well. So specific areas have specific problems and issues. So I know that previous governments felt the necessity to respond to the agitation in Niger Delta, something which I'm very familiar with because I was a consultant for the amnesty program.
Right.
And so that was a political action. You already had the NDDC. All you needed to do is empower it as a commission. Empower it, fund it, and supervise it. And you can then, it can be under the ministry of whatever, So what I think is happening in that regard is not really too much of a problem. In reality, if we take away the politics, it's actually the best way because you have now created in this government additional regional commissions. So are you going to create national ministries for each of those regional commissions as well? You're not going to have Federal Ministry of Northwest Development. So it can't happen. So this is a merging of the supervisory function. That is something you can defend.
Let's take it back a bit, right? And look at this. Maybe because I'm from the South, if that makes any sense, right? But the Niger Delta in and of itself has had a lot of issues. And when you at the top of the list is the fact that this was, that region was pretty much contributed, say about 70% of Nigeria's GDP with the oil, and it's still till this day being pillaged, right? Every administration, whether it's military and our current administration or past administration, democratic or military likewise, have not done the proper thing when it comes to cleaning the land or empowering the people when it comes to agriculture, healthcare, or even education. And so that's why the commission is created. Now, in dissolving this commission, the ministry, in dissolving this ministry, the problem is still there. It still hasn't gone anywhere. So how then are we going to treat this issue if you now pull them under an umbrella of a national commission?
Absolutely no problem at all. Again, it's about the way in which you set up the strategy for the organization. So having a ministry that takes care of all the commissions does not stop it from having divisions or departments that are still focused, directors that are focused on each of those commissions. So you can have, director or deputy director, Niger Delta Commission under the federal ministry. So his focus is to continue the work that the ministry was doing, except it's now a larger umbrella. So it doesn't change because the budget of the NDDC is not going to change, and the available resources to the ministry will not fundamentally change. It doesn't reduce. It just means it's a supervisory activity. And you really should do this work through the governors. The governors are the ones that should marshal the people to fix their states. You see, I am always one of those that doesn't like this idea that we empower the federal government too much. And that's the reason why the people are suffering. Some of these things should go to the local governments. Cleaning, for example, of some of your areas, the funding, the support, infrastructure should go to the local governments.
But Mr. Ashiru, I hate to cut you, but aren't we seeing a situation where, in funding the local government at the moment, there are key players and federal might, I'm going to leave it there, who are now coming out to say, oh no, we cannot, the allocations to the federal government, to the local government, it's unconstitutional or it's not right at this point. It shouldn't be, even though the Supreme Court have ruled for autonomy of the local government. So there's still very much roadblocks when it comes to the actualization of autonomy of local government. It's not too.
All they need to do is obey the Supreme Court. It's not an opinion. Supreme Court has, you see, once a ruling has come from the Supreme Court, there's no more opinion. There's not something like, I don't like it. It's not your personal opinion. It is the law. You see, impunity is when you know the law, but you choose to impose your opinion. My sentiment is no longer useful. Because if I don't obey the Supreme Court, it's now illegal. Your government and your activities are now illegal. If you don't give money to who you should give it to, then you are breaking the law. Let's face that fact, and let's not encourage impunity. So if you wanted to argue this case, you should have argued it before it got to the Supreme Court. Now it got to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court says the Constitution empowers local government. Now what we're supposed to do is fund the local governments. The local governments know their creeks. They know their land more than the federal government. Now you will take federal might and go to that place, and that is where they start having agitations. Because you are now going to bring people, because of federal character, who are coming from other regions, who are coming there because they are representing the federal government, and they're going to impose their ideas on you. You say, no, you don't know this place more than us. So that is why it can't work. So it is still better to have those commissions autonomous and release funds to them and supervise them, that's all.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we probably would continue to struggle with is the supervision aspect of it.
That's right.
The NDDC has been existing for, for decades.
Right.
And, I probably would, give them, some kudos. They have new leadership. They have, repeatedly put out, new projects here and there, that they've embarked upon in the last long while under their new leadership. So, I mean, there's bits and pieces here and there that you can give kudos to them. But the argument would always be that a whole lot more could still be done. The Niger Delta, and of course, we're going to use that as an example, to look at what the Southeast Development Commission will probably be able to achieve, which, of course, just recently got approved. The Niger Delta, for example, has some of the largest allocations to states every month. The 13% derivation also, as part of the allocation. Then you have the NDDC. So there's no argument, for anybody, in any way, shape, or form to excuse failure of the Niger Delta to have been properly developed. I also agree with your argument on the local government. For the longest time, listen, if you go around Lagos, ask anybody who your local government chairman is, they don't know. And the reason is, nobody has really been able to feel the effect of their local government chairman and local government offices in their lives, in their marketplaces, in their hospitals, on their roads, their gutters. Nobody really has been able to feel it. And even when the local government is working, they're not aware that it's local government doing this particular job.
Right.
You're always going to say, oh, Lagos State government. But you don't know it's the local government doing that work because there's not been an actual, and proper structuring of, the conversation concerning local government and the action of local government. So I agree with you in that regard. But I want to talk about the role that the president and his administration should have in ensuring that these things don't fail. Because you can give marching orders. You can tell, these commissions, set up this commission here. 2 years will pass and we'll still be in the same place we are. So how can Mr. President ensure that this is what my administration wants to achieve in the next 4 years and you must not fail?
Okay, before I answer that question, let me piggyback on one of the commissions you mentioned, the National Sports Commission.
Right.
I was a former national athlete under the National Sports Commission.
You really have lived many lives, aren't you?
Yes.
You have lived many lives.
What sport?
1987, I was All-Africa Games silver medalist. I was a national champion and All-Africa Games silver medalist.
Thank you for your service to our nation.
Yes, thank you very much. Under the National Sports Commission. Under the National Sports Commission, we won our first gold in the Olympics, 1996, Chioma Jua. under the National Sports Commission, we won another gold medal in football. So what has happened over time is that sports enthusiasts, I also became a national president of my sport. And when I became the president was when it was changed from ministry to commission back to ministry within that 4-year period, and had 3 ministers. So what has happened is, I keep saying it, you cannot expect to win a gold medal if there's no consistency in your strategy and your planning and funding of that sport. But under the ministry, it was difficult because you had to bring, according to the law of the civil service, you had to bring anybody to the ministry, not necessarily the experts. Yeah. But under the Sports Commission, you cannot be a staffer of the Sports Commission if you're not an expert in sports. It makes it more efficient. And then it makes the planning more consistent. And then there's no DG that will come from the Department of Justice or whatever, and they will say, okay, you have been moved. No, if you don't know anything about sports, you cannot operate here.
All right.
So these are all sensible activities. Now, back to the argument about the president having a strategy. Even in government, there is a place for what we call the balanced scorecard. And the balanced scorecard is probably the most popular strategy map that organizations use. It basically divides all your activities into 4 key areas to implement your overall vision. So if the president has a good, clean vision of what he wants to do in 4 years, he should not have vision for 8 years. Yeah. Because if you have vision for 8 years, politics will get in the way.
Right.
You should be thinking, I have 4 years, I have to deliver. And if a student can be sent to university and in 4 years becomes a graduate, you expect him to work, then we expect you to deliver in 4 years too.
Boom.
That's it.
Boom.
So now if you had a vision long before you came into office, you will then divide it into 4 key areas. First, the finances. How are you going to fund your vision? Then, who is your key stakeholder? Who are the people for which your vision exists? The people. The electorate, right?
Yeah.
Then you are going to now think about what processes am I going to put in place to ensure that I carry the funds and I achieve the vision for the people. And that area is where almost all governments have failed, the processes. And that is the public service. Because you come with your vision, but the public service is not ready. They have not bought into your vision. They don't understand your vision. They cannot interpret your vision. They don't have the skill sets to be able to carry out your vision. So you're going to waste your resources, they're going to waste your money. It's like asking a secondary school student to go and manage a bank.
But one of the most important aspects of it is you also knowing your vision. Because,
True.
I mean, if you ask the presidency today, what was your vision for women in Nigeria? I don't know that you will get a clear-cut answer. And this is, if former Minister Uju Kennedy or Hannah was removed because, well, she was non-performing. What is the vision for, what is the biggest challenge for Nigerian women? If you ask the president today, or anybody in Aso Rock today, what's the biggest problem Nigerian women face? Mm-hmm. I don't know that you will get a clear-cut, data-driven response for you to then be able to tell this person who was minister that, oh, you failed.
Yep. Right.
So, and I'm not saying that they might have, all right? But do Nigerians know, and are Nigerians confident enough that if you call Mr. President today, if he's going to address the Nigerian citizens and say, okay, this is...
Or Nigerian women.
Or Nigerian women, that this is the plan that we have for you, can Mr. President today speak boldly and brilliantly on the problems Nigerian women are facing? Take this same analysis to agriculture, to the digitally blue economy, to every other aspect of governance. Can they speak authoritatively on what their plan is before they tell a minister that he or she failed?
And the funniest thing is that you may even have an answer to that, but then it then becomes your priority in governance. So you come into governance, you realize how much money you have, and you say, okay, you know what? Put that into Bona. Put that into the Bona. Didn't we have a 3-month plan to implement a Rosanya report?
I was going to come to the
and then nobody's talking about it anymore.
And when they came into September, I think a year and about 6 months in, they were talking about adopting the Rosanya report. They were talking about how they were going to merge ministries and just really much implement that report. And so in doing this, they also talked about, we called out, I mean, the media and all critics called out cost cutting and reducing his cabinet, 50 ministers at the time, to reduce it. And to that effect, the president has now capped official convoys and reduced the entourage on foreign and domestic trips. He's also gone ahead to limit ministers and agency heads to 3 official vehicles and reduce their security details. Do you think this is enough? And do you think that this signals a shift towards a leaner government?
It's a waste of time.
Chai.
I'll tell you why. It's all about data. When you take out all of this and you quantify it, how much is the saving? Maximum $1 million. We're talking of an economy that is 300 something $billion economy. And you are saving 1 million and you are making political noise about it. My sister, my brother, no. We are not fools. You may think people are not intelligent, but we do our homework because we're also business people. By the time you save, you cut off one person from local trips, maybe their daily allowance is 150,000, 5 of them. How many times a year do they go out?
Yeah.
When you add it all together, it comes to nothing. But the pronouncement, because the people don't dig deep, will make people feel he's making an effort. Corruption is the biggest problem of Nigeria, which is willful misuse of our resources. Willful mismanagement. I'm saying willful. I'm not talking about incompetent. Willful mismanagement and misuse of our resources. Where a state government, for example, will have resources and every day be sending people abroad because that is the only way they can mop up all the money. It's willful.
Yeah.
You don't fix the roads, but you have sent 20 people on trips to China. You don't fix the roads, you have sent 50 people to go and study and to come back, and they will not implement. They will simply go back and sit down in their desks. That's willful mismanagement of our resources. Yeah. Then you are now saying, let's reduce it to 2. Why bother going to start with? So we have a key thing, is that we don't know exactly how to hold the government responsible. We just want them to be responsible.
So how then can we hold them?
One of the things you said, which is very critical, is this. If I'm running a corporation, and I want to re-engineer the corporation, I don't first move people. I first re-engineer the structure. It will then tell me who I need, who I don't need, even if they are performing. Sorry, I don't need your services anymore because I don't need that division. Mm-hmm. But you move people first, but the structure remains the same. The civil servants who are running, going to implement, are still the same. Yeah. There's no extra training for them, no extra, budgetary allocation to improve their skill sets or to even transform them into your own vision. So you see, I've worked with ministers. I have seen a minister sit down in a meeting exactly 10 years ago and said to me, he's a member of the ruling party, and he said in presence of everybody, I'm disappointed that so many PhD holders here, none of you know anything. He's talking to civil servants. You can't even write basic reports. The grammar is not there. No data to back it up. What is he saying? He's saying the people he has to work with, he is not feeling well. A year later, he was removed from office for non-performance. But he has already made noise about why he's not performing. Yep. If I was not in that room, I would not have known. So we are talking about the fact that there is I keep saying it, there's a holistic problem in managing a country. You don't just cherry pick things and then you do them for political noise. And 2 years, because see, forget this year is gone. You only have 2 years left.
You have 2 years left.
So in 2 years, what will be the key achievement of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu? What would be the one thing you can go away with and say, okay, in America, Obama was there. If you can't remember anything, you remember Obamacare.
Right.
If you cannot remember anything about Obasanjo, you remember that he gave you GSM.
Right. You could argue, that Obamacare student loans here in Nigeria.
Because thank you, because I was going to bring you back to
Please, when we were young, we got bursaries.
Oh, yeah. True.
We got bursaries. Federal government paid our school fees. State governments paid our school fees up until 25 years ago. So it's not an achievement.
So piggybacking off it, because we're almost out of time, piggybacking off, what you're saying about social programs and what his administration would be known for, 2027 is literally 3 years ago. Is my math correct? Yeah, 3 years ago, right? It's 3 years from now, but it's already being brought up in the conversation. with this reshuffle that's happened, how do you see this, and also with the merging of these MDAs and the introduction of new other MDAs as well, and you can now see that the Stephen Orosanya's report may not likely be implemented in this administration anytime soon. How do you see this in long term towards their goal of maybe running for 2027?
See, you and I, the only critical measure of success of a president in this country, in any country, is the economy.
Sure.
If the people cannot feed, if transportation cost is high, cost of running business is high, human development index is very low, multidimensional poverty is 33%,
Right.
81 million Nigerians don't have meters. Those are the real measures of success of a government, not reshuffling 3 or 4 or 5 people.
Yeah. Some
Right.
other thing, that I saw, when the news broke, a lot of people were pointing out the appointment of Bianca Ojukwu. And the narrative was, it was a master stroke, chess move by the current administration to
I should have been
appease
laughing, I'm
the
sorry.
Southeasterners. Do you agree with that? Do you think that
I may be biased. I met her physically when she was MBGN. It just happened to be around the time
You really have lived many
Yes.
lives, haven't you?
when
You
she-
met her when she was MD. That's the most
yeah.
beautiful girl in Nigeria, by the
I
way.
had
This was
been-
1989, just so you
I
know.
was Mr. Nigeria in 1988.
And you also was also an athlete, and you also worked on television, you also
yeah.
politician. How many lives? Are
That
you a
is-
vampire? Do you want my blood?
That is the reason I'm passionate about things I'm talking about. I have
Right.
served Nigeria. I have served Nigeria as a young child. So when I'm speaking, it's not politics, it's passion. And what I can tell you about Bianca is that she's a nice and humble woman. That's what I knew about her when she was young. And I have not seen anything that has changed. Critically, she has experience as being a former ambassador. So that allows her to be good in foreign ministry. My own uncle was a former minister, George Ashiru, of Foreign Affairs. So I have a little bit of an understanding. My father was a diplomat too. So I have a bit of understanding of the necessity and the requirements of putting a brand in that position. I think she'll be able to do a good job. I don't think it's just politics. I think she actually is qualified for that job. So I'm not going to go into the controversy of...
There are many other names that was also touted that should have taken that position, except besides her. Do you think that...
I don't know them. I know Bianca. I will speak for the one I know. Yeah, I mean, like I said, she's been ambassador to 2 nations. So that gives her that additional advantage that she's already been in the public space. She's been in international scene. She's had to deal with foreign governments. So she has the experience now to come back and manage. And she's had, as an ambassador, had to deal with the foreign ministry. So she's had experience with the public service. If you bring somebody new now, 2 years to go, you may not get the same results.
I mean, the argument really is not about her competence. I think everyone understands. She's been, in those places
It was
before.
more
She's
about
definitely
regional
capable.
politics
Exactly. It's more,
placating,
about, was this done to appease the Southeast? And of course, you.
But somebody had to come from Anambra.
Oh, definitely.
So somebody was
There's
removed.
that.
Somebody had to come from Anambra. He removed the female and he replaced that with the female.
As well.
What was even more interesting in this argument is the fact that there were actually 5 persons that was from Ogun State. I know one's talking about it. You know what I mean? Like those Jumoke Odu. Again, just if we're talking
At
about
least the
states,
president is not from Ogun State.
do you get? So if we're talking about states, we might as well talk about that. But besides
Let
that,
me
right?
be a bit biased in that regard also.
That's
All before Tinubu, the 3 presidents from the Southwest have come from Ogun State, Nigeria. The 3 GCFRs had come out of this country. Or 4 of them, Obasanjo, Shoneko, and MQ, GCFR. They come from Ogun State. So Ogun State, over the decades, has always been consistent when it comes to governance and policies and politics.
Okay. Right. So we're out of time pretty much, but I have to ask you, right? And hopefully you're going to humor me. On the heads on the chopping block, there were 5, right? Who was that one head that was missed?
A lot of people believe that the Minister for Power did not do well. 8 outages since he became a minister, and 81 million people still not without meter, and that was one of his goals. And the fact that we have now more people on the estimated billing than before he got into power, those are indices that can easily disqualify
Right.
Yeah, can he argue that he doesn't have the
Doesn't
support,
matter.
financial support,
When you
whatever
employ
support?
someone, they have the option of saying, I can't deliver, I need to go.
I need to go.
Yeah.
And
So
then-
if he
Can
fails,
people also argue about time? You know, if the the current administration
He made his own
has always
promises.
said, you know, here's the thing. You know, they've always said, give Mr. President time. You know, 1 year is not enough to judge on performance. I remember.
Same with Wale, don't give him time.
yeah,
The policies
exactly.
will take 10 years.
So can ministers also have the same argument? Give us time. 16 months is not
you
enough.
must be able to have deliverables for every quarter. And that will give us a trajectory of where you're going. So if your deliverables after 1 year is negative, we're not going to give you an additional chance to mess things up. Look at Minister of Petroleum. I knew you were going there.
How did you know?
The failure of petroleum in this country is squarely on the shoulders of presidents, because presidents have always taken that responsibility upon themselves.
Yeah.
So if refineries are not working, all the presidents of Nigeria since 1999 are directly responsible for the failure of our economy, and they should take responsibility and remove themselves from office rather than removing other people.
Right. I'm surprised we're not calling another name there, Mr. Festus Keyamo, Minister of Aviation. Well, we'll leave it there. So I want to say thank you so much. Mr. George Ashiru has been our guest here. It's been quite the conversation we've been having exactly for 30 minutes. He is the chairman of the African Democratic Congress, ADC, here in Lagos, the Lagos State chapter. Once again, many thanks.
My pleasure. Thank you.